Hello, everybody. We're joining you live from the 2021 General Conference. I'm Jim Poitras. I am totally addicted to missions, and I am the Director of Education and Short-Term Missions for Global Missions of the UPCI. Last night, we had a tremendous service here at the General Conference with our Global Mission Service. Literally hundreds of young people, even older people, flooding the altar, weeping and praying before God, asking for direction in their lives. And I'm glad for this particular broadcast with my friends here today because we can give you a little bit of direction of what may be your next step. A signature statement with us with short-term missions is this: if you're looking for the will of God, finding and doing the will of God is as easy as finding and doing the next right step. A number of years ago, Brother Matthew Johnson with Youth Ministries started working together with us to make sure that there was a plan to transition from those going on AYC, the Apostolic Youth Corps, to those going into our program called Next Steps. And when we'd gather together, you would see in the conferences the booth for AYC, the booth for Next Steps. That was designed intentionally so that we could direct young people through that particular process. And I am glad that I'm here today with my very good friend and fellow minister, Sister Seneatha Clayton, who directs the AYC program for youth ministries. And Seneatha, tell us a little bit about AYC and your experience. I know you've been to a number of countries. I usually tell those on AYC, how many times have you been on AYC? 1, 2, 3, 4. And by the time I get to 4, I say you probably should be looking at what is your next step in missions. I think you're one of those career AYCers. So tell us a little bit about the AYC program.
Yes, I would agree with that. Thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel with you guys. I did. I went on multiple AYC trips. I should have went on Next Steps or AIM after that. But I love AYC, thankful to be able to serve as the director. AYC is a short-term missions program with underneath UPCI Youth Ministries that allows young people from the ages of 15 to 35 to go and kind of dip their toes in missions, just kind of see what it's like. They range from 7 days to 11 days, and they would go all over the world and allow students to get engaged in missions and whatever that looks like in the country. It's an online process. They sign up. They go through multiple layers of approvals, from their pastor and all of that. Then we set them up well to go on the trip. They go have a life-changing experience and come back on fire. Most of them will return as Next Steppers or Aimers. I know we're going to talk about that here in a minute. And then some of them will come back and be on fire in their local assembly, serving the church and their pastors. So it's just a well-rounded thing. I think that every young person needs to go on a short-term missions trip just to get exposure to a different culture and allow them to be removed from the distractions of social media, the world, the day-to-day pressures, and allow the quietness and the stillness for God to speak to them about what their calling is, about what their next right step is. So I'm very thankful for that, for every young people that goes. One thing at the end of each AYC trip, we say, hey, what do you guys want to do next? What is that next right step for you? And a lot of them will come up to me and say, and we'll talk about next steps, and we'll talk about AIM and all the amazing opportunities for them to get plugged in to something bigger than what AYC is, because we want them to go on that track that you and Brother Johnson were able to do. And the questions that come up are kind of like, if I'm done, do I want to go to Next Steps or do I want to do AIM? Do I want to do, what's the difference? How do I do that? And I don't necessarily feel a calling to a certain country, but if I go on Next Steps, they're going to a certain country. Am I only allowed to serve in that country? Those are kind of the questions that I get for their next piece, or how do I get involved in this type of culture? So I would love for you guys to educate all of us, and I ask the same questions too, just to kind of hear your feedback on how the students go on AYC. They love it. We don't want the repeaters. I mean, I know I'm a repeater, and I know you love me, but we want to, push them on the way through. So my question to you would be, how would we answer those questions? How do we help them go through that path?
Seneatha, you're not just really a repeater, you're the guide by the side instead of the sage on the stage, guiding these young people through AYC. It's always a privilege to network with UPCI Youth Ministries, probably just within the last hour. And I know this isn't public knowledge yet, but UPCI Youth Ministries, again this year, allocated scholarship money for 8 young people going on next steps, and we really appreciate that. That's just another level of the partnership that we have together. So glad that Sister Angie Clark is here, the missions mobilizer, the innovator, the missions engineer, and also the coordinator of the Next Steps program. So Sister Angie, tell us a little bit about Next Steps.
Sure, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be on the stage sitting next to Seneatha and hanging out with part of my tribe here. So let me start with a couple of the questions that she asked that she might get from an AYCer who wants to continue on in missions and isn't really sure what that next right step is. So a Next Steps is a program that offers 3 weeks of training, in class, on the field training by missionaries, by executives from headquarters, and even sometimes by AIMers and on occasion some nationals as well. So you get that, it's like over 70 hours of class time. So it's like a miniature Urshan degree when you're done, pretty much. But basically you get that training, but then on the weekends we get to have a little fun, we go do crazy stuff. And then there are 5 weeks of apprenticeship, and this happens every summer. And to answer your other question, let's say we have the training happening in the Pacific region. Well, that doesn't mean that you're stuck there. It just means that you were exposed to a kind of ministry or a kind of people that you may run into down the path of your life in the future, and you're going to have a little experience on what you might be able to pull from that had you not been there, you may not have that experience. And so just because Next Steps is held in Africa doesn't mean you can't move on to Europe. That has actually happened for many of the people that I know. They don't always go back into the region where Next Steps was. So we have freedom of movement in the Next Steps program and in our AIM program as people continue on the pathway to the harvest, because that's what we're really interested in. We're interested in creating a pathway, and if you ask me, someday maybe a superhighway to the harvest. And then we're also very interested in creating that tribe or that community of laborers of all ages, of all marital status, families, retirees, doesn't matter. We all play well together. And so that's kind of what Next Steps tries to facilitate. And kind of like sometimes we tell Next Steppers, especially when the trainers are around, we kind of tried to shield them and protect them a little bit from the environment if we can, just to help them ease into the new culture a little bit. And it's almost like we're providing a hothouse, and that way they can just grow and thrive. And when we leave, then they can, that kind of gets, adjusted a little bit, and they get out a little bit more into the real world. But it's done gradually. It's done in a group environment where it's not just one by one, which we hear back from a lot of people. They like going in a small group. So unlike AYC, where you might have 60 or 80 people on your group to Germany or something, this is going to be a smaller group, smaller than 20. So you have a little more attention, a little more one-on-one time, FaceTime with some of the leadership. So Next Steps is an incredible program. I've been part of its training now for several years, and it's a program I wish I would have had opportunity to participate in when I was that age. So since I couldn't do that, at least I get to be there to help maybe you're the next person or someone you know. So Brother Poitras, that's anything you want to add?
Angie, you probably already covered this, but I know that we do 3 weeks of training. It's the equivalent of 2 college-level courses. And it's 5 weeks of practical work, apprenticeship type of work. So the 3 weeks of training for 5 weeks of practical work, is that what it is?
Well, I think we have a saying that says 3 weeks of training for a lifetime of service. The training is that good. So if you're interested in training, that is a great place to go to get some.
Very good.
I have a question. Is there an age limit on Next Steps?
Yeah. If you can apply at age 17, as long as you turn 18 by the time you get on the plane to go to the field, you're perfectly fine. And if you're 99 and you can get around, you're welcome to. So any range between that.
And I know that Next Steps is life-changing, and it would have been really great to have someone on our panel today that actually experienced the Next Steps program. Oh, wait a minute, I think we have someone sitting right here, Sister Natalie Hill, who is the wife of the Director of Promotions for UPCI Youth Ministries. We claim her as one of our very own because she has been on Next Steps. So Natalie, tell us a little bit about your experience on Next Steps.
Yes, so I went on Next Steps Costa Rica in 2016, and it was definitely life-changing. I wasn't called to missions. I didn't think at the time that I would even go on the missions field. But I went on an AYC trip to New York, and I just wanted something more. I wanted to experience missions globally. And I wanted to kind of be there for longer than what AYC could offer me on a global trip. So I looked into it and I saw this Costa Rica trip and I was like, that's going to be perfect. So I went on it and not knowing what to expect, and it completely changed my life. The classes that they had for those 3 weeks, you get really personal one-on-one time with people who have been there and done that. And even though I wasn't going to be a missionary, I gleaned so much that who knows down the road, maybe if we pastor one day, I'm going to be able to get pretty much produce what I learned into a local level. So I'm so thankful for the Poitrases and for the people who have developed this program, because it really does change lives. And in the moment, I felt like sometimes I didn't really hear what God wanted for me, but it was on Next Steps that He taught me to stay and to really learn what it meant to just dig and do the day-to-day and still feel like I'm doing something for God. So it was a personal trip for me. It wasn't like, oh my goodness, God moved and it was just amazing and miraculous. And He did move and it was miraculous, but in a very personal and deep way where He chiseled and He molded. And it was going through the fire for me. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have had the Bible school experience that I had, because I went to Indiana Bible College directly after my Next Steps trip. And if it also wasn't for my Next Steps trip, I wouldn't have met my husband, because it was through that trip that I met his sister, which then it all just kind of intertwined. And it's really cool to see how God just ordered my steps through that trip. If I had not gone on Next Steps, I would not be where I am today. And I'm so very thankful that I took the dive and I went on it. And now when we have mission services and I meet missionaries, I can put an experience behind the burden. And even though I don't feel that burden to go on the field, I still feel that burden to be a part, even though I'm away in the States. So I would encourage anybody from any walk of life, from any call that you might have on your life, to go and experience Next Steps, because it's going to change the way you view missions and the way you view your own calling. So,
Natalie, you have me totally convinced. I want to go on the Next Steps program. Oh, wait.
I'm so glad.
I'm part of the leadership of the Next Steps program. We are so indebted to our regional directors, both with AYC and Next Steps, because the regional directors, as leaders of the different regions, they've opened up wide the doors for us to operate these two ministries within their region. With Next Steps, regional directors always attend our programs. We're glad that we're here with Brother Lynden, Shalm, the regional director for Asia. Let me tell you a secret. He was my Bible school principal. So now when you're looking at both of us, you definitely know that Brother Shalm is my senior, and turning it over to Brother Shalm, the regional director of Asia.
Well, thank you and no thank you, Brother Poitras. If I was your principal, you are now the principal man. So we're just thrilled to be on this panel. Wow, what a discussion. Like-minded missionary people and at different stages of the development for young people. This is just an incredible experience that I grew up on the mission field, and if I would have had the opportunity back then that young people have today, Next Steps is a phenomenal step in the right direction, and we have had two in the Asia region, two very successful Next Steps, and thanks to Sister Angie Clark for the great work that she has done. We've also been involved with AYC. And let me just say that probably these two just blend into each other so well. I would say that AYC is probably more of an exposure for young people. It exposes them to a whole new culture, a whole new idea of the way that God's work is done. And then when you move on to next steps, that's more of an immersion where you're starting to now get into the deeper things of the country, a little bit more about learning the language, a little bit more about ministry. And if just briefly I could share one experience, Brother Poitras, it was in the northern part of Sri Lanka, actually in the tea estates where the Tamil people are. And the young people went there to minister, and as they began to minister, they weren't expecting this, but all of a sudden there were several people that had evil spirits that came and they were in the service. And these young people said, "What do we do? What are we going to do with this?" You know, well, I said, "What do you got inside of you?" So then they began to understand that greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. They began to minister right there as next steppers, like official missionaries on site, doing the work of God. And those people were delivered from evil spirits. And it was these young people, next steppers, that were becoming so intricately involved in the work of God. You got to go on next steps.
If you have a burden or a vision to do something for Jesus in the kingdom, and you want to be involved with global missions, I want to tell you, those people on this platform right now, we are here for you. We are behind you. We want to connect with you. There are other regional directors that also want to help you. We want to get you into a ripened harvest. And we are backing you up, and we know that the Lord is going to bless you. Right now, we're going to see a short video as we close off on the Next Steps trip to Madagascar in Africa.
Madagascar. We're excited to have the Next Steps come to Madagascar next year, and we believe that it will be a life-changing event for you. We look forward to having you make the long trek across the globe to be a part of the work over here in Madagascar. Enjoy while you see some of the scenery from around this island. God bless.